Today we are going to study the first poem of Standard 10th. The name of the poem is Where the Mind is Without Fear. This poem is written by Rabindranath Tagore. As we all know, Rabindranath Tagore was a Bengali poet. He was a playwright and a painter as well. He introduced the Indian culture to the West and vice versa. In 1913, he was the first non-European to receive the Nobel Prize for Literature. The present poem is taken from an award-winning anthology, Gitanjali. The book is indeed an asset to all literally minded people. It's a rare mix of genius is visible in this book. This book is in the form of anthology. Anthology is a collection of poem or other piece of writing. This poem is one of his vastly read and discussed poems. It was originally composed in Bengali. Later, he himself have translated it into English. Tagore lived in the time when India was ruled by British. In this poem, besides the political freedom from British, Tagore also appeals to the God for social, educational, economic freedom for the people of India. Reading Rabindranath is knowing Rabindranath. Now we shall see the first 4 lines of the poem. The poem says, where the mind is without fear and the head is held high, where the knowledge is free, where the world is not broken up into the fragments by the narrow domestic wall. Here, the poet wants how his country should be. He says that in the opening life itself, one must be able to live without fear. This fear can be in the form of any thought, physical harm, or a forced compulsion. He wishes that everyone in his country should hold his head high in dignity. In other words, every person should be fearless. The poet dreams of his nation where the knowledge is free. Education should not be restricted to any particular class, but everybody is allowed to acquire knowledge. The poet thinks that there should be no division among the people on the basis of their caste, creed, color, or religion. In other words, the society should not be divided into the groups to break their unity. The next line of the poem are, where the words come from the depth of the truth, where the tireless striving stretches its arm towards perfection, where the clear stream of the reason has not lost its way into the dirty desert sand of dead habits. Here, Tagore wants the people to be truthful. They should speak the truth even if it might create the adverse effect. The poet wants everyone to work hard to reach their goal. The people should not be lazy and ignorant to their work. The poet compares reason or the logical thinking to the clear stream and the dead habits to the superstitious belief. The poet says that there should be the logical thinking, and such logical thinking should not be stopped by the old baseless beliefs. One must be willing to change, to try new things. The next line says that where the mind is led forward by thee into the ever-widening thought of action, into that heaven of freedom, my Father, let my country awake. Here, the poet wishes that his countrymen should be progressive and broad-minded. In short, the people should be open-minded, they should be extraordinary, they should overcome the narrow-mindedness. Finally, the poet addresses the God as the Father and pleads for the heaven of freedom. That is, the poet prays the God to awaken his countrymen so that they come out from the darkness of ignorance, prejudice, and other evils. Friends, now we are studying the poem Where the Mind is Without Fear. Poetry is a form of literature. It is a writing to share ideas, expressions, emotions, to create imaginations, etc. Some poems have rhyming schemes, that is, the like sounding words. It can be divided into stanzas, like a paragraph, or, or, a, or a prose. There are nearly 15 types of poetic form, out of which 9 are explained in our textbook. A short poem of 14 lines is called as sonnet. A 5-line funny poem with a rhyming scheme A is called as limerick. A ballad is a poem which is a song or a narrating a story with a message. LG is a sad poem. It is usually written to praise or express the sorrow for who is dead. The purpose of the poem is to express the feeling rather than to tell a story. A free verse do not have any uniformity or any kind of rhyme. There is no rhyming word, there is no rhyming scheme, and there is no particular structure for the poem. The present poem, for Where the Mind is Without Fear, is having a free verse. There is no particular rhyme or rhyming scheme in this poem. An epic poem is it's a narrative poem. It is usually about the heroic deeds and even the significant to the culture of the poet. The lyric is a song-like poem. A humorous poem is written just to create a humor. Eldai is a poem which is in the picturesque form related to the countryside background. Now, when we have studied this poem, do you think this poem is written for India alone? Well, it may not be so, because in those days there were many countries which were under the oppressive rule, and I think the poet is talking about the freedom of all such countries. In that case, we can't say that this poem is written for India alone. What should the words we speak reflect? They should reflect the truth. We should be able to speak without any fear or hesitation. What should the people keep on widening? And how this can be done? The people should keep on widening their thoughts and action. And this can be done by broadening their outlook. From what darkness of the night should the nation awake? Our nation should awake from the darkness of the night means the people should break free from the oppressive colonial rule which was dark like a long night, and we should be able to breathe the fresh air of freedom. What attributes of the Rabindranath can be reflected from this poem? We can understand that he realized his countrymen are in deep ignorance. So he requests the God to help his countrymen to be progressive. They should become logical, have progressive and broad-minded mind. The poet is concerned about the well-being of the people. He is hopeful for the better tomorrow. Now, when we are studying the poem, many a times there are many figures of speech in this. And the main figure of speech in this poem, what we find is metaphor. Now, how many metaphor do you find, and rather what is a metaphor? We can say a metaphor is a figure of speech where there is an indirect comparison. Here we can find many such indirect comparisons, like narrow domestic wall. There is an indirect comparison is made between the narrow domestic wall and the narrow-mindedness of the people in the society. From the line where the clear stream of reason have not lost his way. In this line, the comparison is made between the clear stream of reason and the dirty desert is compared to the dead habits. When we are studying the poem, again some important part is the appreciation of the poem. In the appreciation of the poem, we have to write many things like the title of the poem, name of poem, rhyming scheme, the favorite line, central idea of the poem, figure of speech, and such features that you have liked or why you have liked the poem. So, this is a very nice poem what we have studied right now, where the mind is without fear. Again, this poem is written by Shri Rabindranath. Knowing Rabindranath is reading Rabindranath. So if you want to know more about Rabindranath, we have to read Rabindranath.